Hello and welcome to another Stellarium Games video. In this episode, we're going to be continuing our DM box series where we're filling up a box full of goodies for a new Dungeon Master. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at how to make some stalagmites, stalactites, basically cavern scatter terrain that can be used for caves, caverns, things like that. I built a whole series of different sizes. Some are sized at about this height, which is about 2 inches high. So this would be a really small, low ceilinged cavern. All of the stalagmites would fit within that size. I included some smaller scatter terrain as well, so just some small stalagmites to go along with that. But then I sized up and made these about 3.5 inches tall. So this would be kind of a medium-sized cavern. This is what I'm going to put into the box along with the small stuff. Just a few of these pieces should be enough for that ultimate dungeon terrain. But these are basically meant to represent the height of the cavern, and they have a flat ceiling to them. So it's just representing this is how tall the cavern is in this setting. The stalagmites obviously could be used for any size if you wanted to make them really small, really tight, or really large too. These could fit any size. I made some for myself as well, and I made them this size. So kind of have the medium-sized cavern and the large-sized cavern. These I think are around 7 inches tall. So this would be for a very large open cavern. You know, it would house very large animals or beasts inside this kind of a cavern versus in the smaller caverns, you'd end up with a lot smaller creatures that you'd be facing. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at. So let's go to the table and see how it's done. Okay, for this craft, we're going to use 2-inch XPS foam. And I'm just kind of randomly cutting out chunks of the XPS with a utility knife. Selected it down to just a single piece. And now I'm just using the knife to whittle away sections of the foam, trying to create, I guess what I'm thinking of as weathered sections of those pillars and stalagmites. I'm using a very small offal blade to kind of use a sawing motion, cutting down the sides of the foam so that you don't end up with good smooth cuts, but rather kind of more chaotic, rough hewn look. Even though the stalagmites aren't really hewn, they should be deposited over, hundreds of years, thousands of years, etc. I still wanted it to have a little bit more, I guess, not shaped look. So I'm just using the knife and just cutting as randomly as possible while creating some interesting shapes with voids in between that could be used to be able to see between, but create obstacles and places to hide, etc. in the caverns. Again, just showing you several different variations of cutting out the foam and shaping it in interesting ways. I'm going to actually cut out a floor stalagmite. Again, you can just see I'm just cutting out voids in the styrofoam. This one's a little bit smaller one, so I'm wanting to make the rounded domes and spikiness to the stalagmites. I'm using the blade kind of vertically to simulate some of the ribbons that might have formed as part of the stalagmites. I'm using a heat gun, screwing it into the bottom, putting a screw in the bottom of the stalagmites and using a heat gun to kind of cauterize the pieces and smooth them out quite a bit. For some pieces, I experimented with a hot glue gun to coat the entire thing in kind of a hot glue surface. This would give it a much more interesting feel to it. I ended up only doing it on a couple pieces. For one reason, it was going to be a lot of hot glue to coat these things. And the other was a little bit hard to control, and I knew it would be hard to get inside some of the pieces. So I continued with a few, just painting them up all the way through the process, but you'll see those at the end. Now I'm adding some smaller screws to the bottom of all the stalagmites. That'll give it some weight, as well as some of the bigger ones. I'm using different size screws to add quite a bit more weight. Then I'm coming along with black paint and Mod Podge, giving them a full coat, bottom, top, all the way around. This will be a nice hard shell. Now I'm using a dark brown paint to give it a pretty thorough dry brush as the base coat. Next I'm using kind of the sandy tan for another dry brush coat. Again, pretty liberal with this one. I wanted it to have kind of a limestone feel, so that was a good base coat as well. Then lastly, I'm using a lighter tan, and this one I'm only hitting the very tops and kind of leaving the bottoms more exposed. This would kind of give it a little bit different feel than some of the other pieces that I've done. Now I'm adding a black wash once all the paint is fully dry, just coating the entire thing in a nice, pretty thick black wash. The streakiness to the black wash ended up being a really nice touch to all of the pieces and made up for not using the hot glue earlier. So here's the difference between the smooth pieces on the left and the hot glue pieces on the right, just so you can see some of the variation. The hot glue definitely has its place for some of these terrains, but I like how the smooth pieces turned out, and it was a lot easier than trying to do the whole thing in hot glue. So here's the finished product, kind of on the game table. This is the low cavern version. It would certainly be good for, smaller creatures and regular caves, I guess. This is the medium cavern where some of the larger beasts might be found. It would be pretty large for a human walking into a cavern like this. And then last up, we're going to have the tall caverns, and that's quite a bit larger for the humans and allows for much larger beasts. So that's it for this video. If you like it, please hit the like button and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Thank you.